Hello, hello, everybody. How are you guys doing? You okay? First order of business, roll call. Roll call is always first and foremost. I want to make sure that everyone is here, that you are all present and accounted for. So, sound off in the comments. Tell me that you're here. You can talk about anything, your favorite food, although we are here to talk about politics, right? So, let's try to stay on topic. I see we have a little over 100 people watching. Very nice, very nice. Jolly good show. And just 87 likes. Obviously, there is a discrepancy here. And so I therefore kindly ask you to balance this equation so that we have an equal amount of likes and an equal amount of concurrent viewers. Yes, thank you very much. I see the numbers rising already. Very good, very good. So, isn't that beautiful? I see all you guys in the comments saying that you're present, saying that you're here. Someone has said nachos. Very good. Allo, c'est moi, says, I'm here, Richard. Peace and love from Canada. Laura says, listening in Thailand. Alan says, hello from Florida. I love this. I love when people say where they are. You know, it gives us like a mental image, an idea of where everyone is. And I think that's beautiful, right? So that's really cool. And, you know, we have to ease into the topics. Sometimes I dive right in. But sometimes we got to ease into it because it's, you know, it's a lot of bullshit. Damn it. I couldn't make it 5 minutes without cussing. We've done better. We've done better in the past. So I prefer to ease in. So the second order of business, we are now, look at this really high tech, extremely, you know, proficient graph over here. We are now at 425 supporters on Patreon. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's supporting the show. And if you would like to, you can go to the links below. So that's very good. We're halfway to our goal. Thank you for that. So let's go into our first topic, okay? Wow. Wow. Where do we start with this one? Like literally, where do we start? Because actually I have to tell you something that happened 2 days ago as well, so you understand the whole backstory. So, you know, let's try and do our best here. I think I heard a microphone or something. That's not supposed to. No. Okay. Shall we begin? So the House, they just had a vote on the House floor about replenishing Israel's Iron Dome, right? They want to give Israel $1 billion in addition to what they already give Israel every year, the $3.8 billion, because Israel needs to replenish its Iron Dome. You know, this is basically its surface-to-air missile defense system to shoot down rockets, short-range to medium-range rockets, right? And then they also have, I think, David Sling, and they have Arrow 1, 2, 3. So they depending on the range of the missiles, they have different systems. Iron Dome is for short range, and they ran out. You see, they need to replenish it because back in May, as you may recall, when they were butchering Palestinians, they ran out of their defensive rockets. So they need more of them. And the House floor had a vote. And as you can guess, this overwhelmingly passed. I mean, you as soon as I said it, you know that this passed, right? And what's interesting about this vote, okay? Take a look. It passed by 420 to 9. Overwhelming majority, landslide, slam dunk. Okay, so 420 in Congress, in the U.S. Congress, in favor of replenishing Israel's Iron Dome. 9 were not. Who are these 9? Let's take a look. So, if we see here, there were 9 people who voted no. Let's read their names. Bush, Carson, Garcia, okay? Rialva, Masih, Newman, Omar, Presley, Tlaib. Oh, who's missing from this list? It couldn't be AOC, could it? Oh, yes, turns out she is missing from this list. She voted present. but not at first. As you can see here with Johnson, she voted present, but not at first. Initially, AOC voted no with the rest of the so-called squad, these progressives in Congress. She voted no, and then she switched it to present because voting no, voting against Israel would be too hard, right? So you can see this clip over here. It says, tears on the House floor. AOC appears to be crying as the House passed a $1 billion funding for Israel's Iron Dome. She voted no, then switched her vote to present last minute.
Nay on House Resolution 483 amendment. He votes nay.
For what purpose?
And as you can see here, Nancy Pelosi issued a lovely speech. She says, I thank yada yada yada, because Iron Dome is, she says she wants to express her thanks to the floor, to further express the will of Congress in a bipartisan way for the security of Israel, right? And she says Iron Dome is a purely defensive system, okay, designed to safeguard all civilians living in Israel. The system was co-developed by the U.S. and Israel and has saved thousands of lives. We will get back to this, okay? So this is very interesting. This is very interesting. Now, just to cut this short, this is a con. This is a con. This is a trick. This is a game, okay? What they're playing here, this is a game. And I can prove it to you. Because a few months ago, in July, what happened in July? They were voting whether to give Israel their annual unconditional aid, right? Even though it was approved by Obama for 10 years, 38 billion over 10 years, every year it has to be approved by Congress, again, nonetheless, right? This is what happened, okay? Let me pull this up. This is what happened in July. Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Lee, Bowman, and Jayapal all voted to continue giving Israel unconditional aid. The bill barely got through with 217 votes. Instead of holding it up, they cast the votes it needed to pass. And this is very important, right? Who voted no at the time? AOC. So do you understand what's going on? In July, AOC votes against giving Israel aid because she knows it's going to pass anyway. Because as I just read to you, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Lee, Bowman, Jayapal made sure that it passes. It passed at 217. Barely passing, right? Barely getting through. They made sure it passes. So AOC can vote no. Doesn't matter, right? She gets to keep her street cred. She gets to, market herself as so progressive, whatever, diarrhea you want to, verbal diarrhea you want to think of. Today, it's the opposite. Today, what happened was the opposite. Ilhan Omar voted no. Okay? Look, let me bring it up to you again. Look here. Ilhan Omar voted no. Ayanna Pressley voted no. Rashida Tlaib voted no. Actually, Tlaib, I think, is the only consistent one because she voted no on both. So today they voted no. And AOC was going to vote no, but she didn't. At the last minute, she couldn't muster the courage to stand up for Palestinians, to stand up for Syrians. She had to go and give a present vote. Because this thing is getting through regardless, right? You understood, 420 votes. It's going through regardless what AOC votes, regardless what Ilhan Omar votes. But when it mattered in July, they made sure it passed. Yes, even Ilhan Omar, who was attacked by the Israeli lobby relentlessly. Do you remember how many times they called her anti-Semitic? They tried to ruin her career. Even now, they still call her that. They still call all of them that, even though they voted to give Israel the money, right? This is all theater. So when it matters, they all vote to give Israel the money. And today, when it doesn't matter, they've all voted no. But even AOC couldn't vote no. Oh, man. Oh, man. What a goddamn scam. What a goddamn scam. Really. And so this is not something new. This is not something new because if you look here, what Glenn Greenwald posted, okay? He said that while Tlaib, Omar, Bush, and Pressley voted no to fund Israel's Iron Dome, arguing they should fund it themselves, AOC voted present, just like she voted present on Pelosi's $2 billion hike for the Capitol Police, okay? And if you go watch Glenn's video, which is marvelous, it's on Rumble, it says 2 questions for AOC. He talks about this, right? How Pelosi wanted to give $2 billion extra to the Capitol Police. And they were all going to vote no, the squad. But then when they realized that if they vote no, they will sink the bill, AOC voted present, right? And they made sure that it got through. Just like what I explained to you with the Israeli funding in July. The same thing. Okay? And again, I can give you another example of this. Take a look. When is this? This is back in March. The House bill included the $15 minimum wage. It goes to the Senate. The Senate killed it. Then the Senate sent back the bill to the House without the $15 minimum wage, okay? And the House passed it anyway with a tiny margin of 9 votes. Progressives could have put their foot down, but didn't. They allowed it to pass. They allowed it to pass. You see that? It barely got through. AOC votes for it. So AOC says, I support a $15 minimum wage. I support a $15 minimum wage. And the Senate takes the $15 minimum wage out of the bill, hands it to her, and she's like, okay, I'll vote for it. Are you understanding the game here? Every time there's a shitty bill, just enough of them, of the squad, will vote to make sure that it passes, whether it's removing the $15 minimum wage from the omnibus, whether it's giving Israel aid, whether it's the Capitol Hill Police, $2 billion for the Capitol Hill Police. Just enough of them will vote to make sure that it gets through, and then the others will get to vote no and posture and pretend that, no, I'm totally against this. I'm sticking to my principles. And then they take turns, which is why it makes no fucking sense, because in July, Ilhan Omar is voting to give Israel money, and then today she doesn't want to give them Iron Dome money. And it's the same thing, by the way, with the $15 minimum wage. So in the House, they had a vote to pass the omnibus without the $15 minimum wage in the beginning, before it went to the Senate, right? They all voted no, right? Like, why would we remove the $15 minimum wage? But the Senate removes it and sends it back, and then they vote for it anyway. Oh my God, they are... How can people not see this con by now? How can people not realize what's going on? These people are serving the establishment's agenda. They're the best tool that the Democratic Party has. They literally help them pass everything they need to pass. And they take turns doing it, so it's not just one of them which gets all the flack, right? And when they voted for Pelosi as speaker, what happened with that? Same thing like today, right? They're doing the roll call. I was watching it live. I reported on it live. They're going through the roll call. Who wants to vote for Pelosi as speaker? She barely got it. Barely got it. Cori Bush, where's Cori Bush? Cori Bush is not here. Oh my God, is she going to sink Pelosi's speakership? AOC is not here. And then at the last minute, they sneak in through the back and they vote for her as speaker. Every single one of them. Bowman, Tlaib, all of them. They fucking voted. They bent the knee and they kissed that ring. These spineless politicians. And then Glenn, he also points out something else very interesting, which is that AOC shat on Tulsi Gabbard when Tulsi was voting president on Trump's impeachment, right? In 2019. Let me read you the quote. This is the headline from New York Post. AOC slams Tulsi Gabbard over president vote on impeachment articles. Okay, and if you scroll down over here, this is what AOC says. Quote, today was very consequential, and to not take a stand one way or another on a day of such great consequence to this country, I think is quite difficult. Okay, we are sent here to lead. And here, Glenn highlights another quote from AOC at the same time. Whenever we have a vote, we should vote yes and we should vote no. Voting present is a very tough position to be in. So AOC is unequivocal. AOC is unequivocal. She says whenever there's a vote, you have to vote yes or no. Okay, so why did she go back on her own rule, on her own slogan, on her own dogma for the Capitol Hill Police? She voted present. Today, for Israel getting the Iron Dome money, she voted present. That's weird. Why did she shit all over Tulsi Gabbard and then she does the same thing? I think that's what we call hypocrisy. No? But to me, this isn't the greatest hypocrisy. To me, the greatest hypocrisy is that they say, oh, we are progressives. I'm a progressive. They pretend to support human rights. They pretend to support Palestine and Palestinians' right to self-determination and liberation. And then they do shit like this. They vote to give Israel billions of dollars in July. Today, they only vote no because it's symbolic. And even then, AOC can't even, she can't even grow a spine, and she has to vote president. You know why she voted president? Because she is a congresswoman from New York. You cannot survive as a fucking politician in America, never mind New York, if you don't vote in favor of Israel. Do you understand? So she wants a long career. This is politics 101. Everyone knows this shit, okay? In America, you want to be a politician, you have to kiss Israel's ass, especially in New York. And AOC is a congresswoman from New York. She wants a long career in DC. She wants a long career. She has big ambitions. Okay? So she voted president. Even though it didn't count, she could have easily voted no, and it wouldn't have mattered because the money was going to go through anyway. We know that. 420-9. Okay? She only voted no in July because Ilhan Omar, they got her covered. Ayanna Pressley got her covered. It's like, it's okay, you can go vote no. We're going to pass it anyway. How can people not see this con? I mean, all politics is performative. All politics is theater. But this is especially heinous. How can people not see this shit? What is this? What is so fucking miraculous about them? You should be paying particular attention to this group because they market themselves as socialists. They market themselves as some kind of, leftist wing of the Democratic Party. They're not leftist shit. No, they're helping the Democratic Party continue the same things. Funding Israel, funding the police, maintaining the military budget. Now, what's it been hiked to now? $740 billion. It's the same policies. Nothing is changing. They never stop the bills when they can, right? When they actually have the power to do it, they don't do it. I've just given you multiple examples, and there are still more. I mean, one should suffice. One should make you scratch your head and go, hold on, what the fuck is going on here? You said A and now you're doing B? I've given you multiple examples here. They keep going through. And what's funny about this, do you know what happened the other day? So the other day is 48 hours ago, right? This is what happened. Oh, you're going to love this. So this was on September 21st, right? The progressives, they actually managed to do something good for once. Right? And I just want to show you, when they did this, I gave them props. You see here, I wrote, finally, progressives do something good, using their leverage as a block to cut money to Israel. Well done. This is how you do it. Right? So I don't care who it is. If they do something right or they say something right, I will explain that what they said is right. I'm not going to go and be like, oh, I don't like that person, so I'm going to shit on what they said, even though I actually agree with it or even though it's correct. They did something right. Today, they did something wrong. You got to call it out for how it is. You got to say it for what it is. So what did they do 3 days ago? They wanted so when we're talking about hold on. No, this is the wrong tab. Hold on. There we go. So you can see here, Democrats split over military aid to Israel. Progressives threatened to oppose spending bill if it includes funds for Israel's Iron Dome. So that's what it was. They wanted to, what Nancy Pelosi did, she wanted to entice Republicans. She wanted to convince Republicans to vote for this bill. Okay. Republicans, how did she plan on convincing them? She stuffed the Iron Dome funding inside the bill. She's like, well, you all love Israel, right? So of course you'll vote for this if I put it in the bill. And Republicans were like, no, we're not voting for it. We don't want to raise the debt ceiling. Okay? So even with the Iron Dome funding, they didn't want to vote for it. And progressives said, we're not voting for it either. We're not voting for this bill if you put the Iron Dome funding inside of it, which, as I said, that's a good thing. That's the correct position. Okay? And so they managed to do it because of the progressives. Okay? They were able to block this from moving forward. The Republicans were going to vote no. And as usual, it's down to this tiny progressive bloc to decide whether this bill advances or whether it sinks. And here, for fucking once, they actually grew a spine. For once. And as I did, I congratulated them for it. I said, this is how you do it. Okay? So Jamal Bowman, he said Pelosi introduced the Iron Dome money at the last minute, as we said, to get Republican support. And it didn't work because they didn't want to raise the debt ceiling. And this is funny now because the Republicans, who themselves said, no, we're not voting for it, even with the Iron Dome money, are turning around and then calling the Squad and progressives anti-Semitic. Hold on a second. You just said you're not voting for it either. Aren't you anti-Semitic by your own definition? You also don't want to vote for it, even though it has Iron Dome money. Like, this is just so insane, right? It's again this hilarious, this comical bickering between Republican and Democrat as if they are that much different from each other. It's the same shit. They share the same characteristics. It's the same corrupt gang. But anyway, afterwards, they managed to block. I will get into the Iron Dome itself in a second, but I just want to point this out. This is what I wrote at the end. I said, don't worry though, because ultimately, the Iron Dome money will very likely be moved to the 2022 Defense Appropriations Bill, where it will pass. Israel will get its billions so it can continue illegally occupying Palestine and Syria and killing with impunity. Well, I was half correct because it did get moved, just not to the Defense Appropriations Bill. It just got moved much earlier, like 3 days later. That's it. Because as you know, Israel is a huge priority. You can't let Israel wait around. You can wait around. You, the American, you can wait around for healthcare. You can wait around for COVID relief. You can wait around your whole fucking life to get something from the government, the people who are supposed to represent you. But Israel will not wait 3 fucking days. They will get their money. They will get their money. Let that be a lesson to you. Did you see that shit? 3 days. They got it passed. Israel getting them billions. Did you get anything? So, I mean, this is really incredible, right? This is really incredible. So, going back to this article from Roll Call, they say Democrats were deeply divided over whether to include the $1 billion in the continuing resolution or not. Okay? And it worked. They blocked it, right? They blocked it. But today, obviously, when it was moved to its own vote, today, 3 days later, when it was raised on the House floor, where it was brought up on the House floor, are we giving Israel, we meaning the United States, are we giving Israel this $1 billion to replenish its Iron Dome? It was too good to be true, right? Those same progressives who blocked it, most of them, they stayed on that position. But AOC, she can't sacrifice her career ambitions for Palestinians. I'm sorry, that's how it works. Of course, look, man, when push comes to shove, it's their asses over everyone else's. And AOC is not going to catch flack for Palestinians. You know, when she was actually doing an interview with Glenn in The Intercept in 2018 before she got elected, what was she saying back then? He asked her a very poignant question. It was very smart because you can immediately tell, especially for someone running in New York where they stand. He asked her what she thought about what Israel was doing at the border, right? The so-called border with Gaza, where they were shooting Palestinians, right? They killed hundreds, they injured thousands at this border fence. And she called Israel out on it, right? She said, this is terrible. I'm paraphrasing here, but she criticized them heavily, which is refreshing. You never hear that from an American politician, never mind someone running in New York, right? But as you can see today, once she's in power, she has the keys. Now it's a different story. Now it's a different story, right? Like in the most stereotypical fashion of every politician who ever existed, they say one thing and then do another. They're complete fucking liars. And so this is not just AOC, this is all of them. As I mentioned, they take turns. July, Ilhan Omar is voting to give Israel money. Today she votes no, and AOC takes the flak. They exchange, they take turns. Very smart, right? So when we say it's all performative, we mean this, you know? First of all, AOC, what does she do? She does the Medicare for All mask, you know? Oh, let's not force a vote or do something. I don't care if you force the vote or not. Let's do something to, something to get Medicare for all passed. No, let's make a mask instead. Are we going to tax the rich? No, we're just going to make a dress out of it. So who knows, guys? Maybe we'll get lucky, and now AOC will release a tank that says "Free Palestine" or something like that. Don't expect too much. Just performative things. Just performative things. And it's really funny that people think that AOC was crying. If you go and read some comments, which I don't advise you to do, but for your mental well-being, some people think that she was crying in this video today on the House floor because Israel got the money. That was a performance. That's an absolute performance. These are crocodile tears. It's just like when she's going to the border. You remember the pictures at the border fence where she is with the US-Mexico border, and she's crying about the kids in cages. And now that Biden is in power, and he's also putting the kids in cages, and now he wants to, you saw the news with Guantanamo Bay, looking for a private contractor now. Nothing, not a word. It's all crocodile tears. She's a politician. She's an American politician. Like, grow up, man. Grow up. So the thing is, when we talk about Iron Dome, you hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's defensive," right? People in the U.S. Congress are saying this, like, "Of course we should fund this. It's a defensive measure." Well, that's funny because when you're giving Israel the $3 billion, you didn't distinguish whether it's going to be defensive or offensive. You know damn well they're going to murder Palestinians with it, and you fucking gave it to them anyway. So this idea that they care only, they just want to give Israel things to defend itself with is ludicrous, because they always give Israel billions every year. And what does Israel do with them? It kills civilians. It kills Palestinians. Since the year 2000, 87% of the victims in Gaza are Palestinian. Okay? The majority of them are civilians. Every time Israel does a ground invasion or an aerial assault, the ratio is astronomical. What happened in May? In May, 240 Palestinians killed, almost 2,000 injured, 12 Israelis. I think it was 12 Israelis killed. I mean, this is a bloodbath. It's the same thing. You go look at 2009, 2014. It's always the same thing. The ratio is astronomical. If anyone needs to defend themselves, it's the Palestinians. And since you're saying the Iron Dome is just defensive, why don't you give Palestinians an Iron Dome then if it's just defensive? Are you against Palestinians defending themselves? Why would you say that? You're very benevolent and charitable, giving billions to Israel so they can defend themselves. Give Palestinians billions to defend themselves too. I think they need it, given that they keep getting massacred by Israel. No? And so this idea that it's just defensive is ludicrous, because when you go and you steal someone's land, you invade their country, and you put military installations on their land, I don't care what the function of the military installation is. Yes, an Iron Dome shoots down other rockets. Yes, but it's on someone else's land. If you are an occupying force, you are an aggressor by definition. You invaded someone's country. You are colonizing them and occupying them. Nothing you do is defensive. You are the aggressor. So this idea that the Iron Dome is defensive, they have Iron Dome all over the occupied territories. If I'm not mistaken, they even have some in the Syrian Golan Heights. These are illegally occupied. I don't care what the fuck you install there, if you put a sniper or an Iron Dome or an airfield. All of this is offensive, and you are the aggressor. You are an illegal occupier. Nothing you do is defensive by definition. But of course, people are too fucking stupid, or they're dishonest. They're too dishonest to explain it that way, right? So they try it again. Israel is always the victim, even though Israelis are not dying. The Palestinians are the ones being massacred. The Palestinians don't even have a military budget. They don't have a military, nothing. They have nothing. No Air Force, no Navy, nothing. But Israel is still the victim, and they need billions of dollars. This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable, man. And I mean, just, the American taxpayer, they don't have health care. They don't have free college. They have jack shit compared to other developed countries. Israel gives its people free college and free healthcare and all these nice amenities and basic goods. Why don't Americans have that? If Americans don't have these things and they're forking over billions for Israel, Israel can pay for its own Iron Dome system easily. This is not, in the old days, they'd say, oh, look, Israel can't do anything. And that's why Israel has been able to withstand so long. It's purely because of NATO and US support, right? Israel doesn't need any of that money now. It can easily replenish its own Iron Dome. This is just about controlling the United States political apparatus, and as much as possible. Israel needs an ally in the U.S. because the U.S. has a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. So, if you have a friend with veto power on the UN Security Council, very, very, favorable and practical to avoid any sort of accountability, right? And so this idea that it's just defensive is ludicrous. Give Palestinians one, then, if it's defensive. And the other day, I saw the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. He was calling AOC anti-Semitic because she wanted to restrict one type of weapon made by Boeing that was used to kill Palestinians in May, just a few months ago, right? So she's not even saying, I want to cut all military funding, all military aid to Israel. Just one weapon, one type of weapon, right? And the Israeli ambassador is calling her anti-Semitic. So there's always a reason to make sure that Israel gets the money. You are either anti-Semitic or, you don't want Israel to defend itself. There's always a fucking reason. In the end, Israel gets its money. Right? Always. So I don't understand why it's the United States' responsibility to pay for Israel's military. Why doesn't the United States pay for the United Kingdom's military? Why don't they pay for Zimbabwe's military or Switzerland's military or Mongolia's military? Why don't they pay for Sierra Leone's military? Why Israel? Why does Israel get $3 billion? Can someone answer that? Why does the U.S. taxpayer have to give them all this money? Right? So, as predicted, here it is. It got passed. This is what U.S. politics is. It's all theater. It's all performance. And there is no left wing. There is no a socialist wing in the Democratic Party. This is a farce of the highest order. Okay? This facade, this act that they put on of taking turns to make sure that the bills pass while maintaining their street cred. Oh man, if you haven't woken up to this, God help you, really. Not to mention just the hypocrisy of it all, not just contradicting their own votes. One time they vote for something, the next time they don't vote for it, or vice versa. But just their principles, their so-called principles, their values, what they ran on. How is any of this in line with what they ran on? It's not just Palestine, as I've pointed out to you. They chant defund the police, and then they vote to give the police $2 billion, right? They say free Palestine, and then they give money to Israel. Yeah? And then they say $15 minimum wage, and they vote for the bill after the Senate removed the $15 minimum wage. These people are fucking frauds. Period. Okay. So we have 300 people watching. Very good, very nice. And we have 300 likes. Very good. I don't have to ask you to do anything. That's very good. Well done. So I'm just going to read some of your comments over here. You've been very kind and generous to send some donations. Don't worry, we're not done yet. Just give me a second so I can read them. Okay, so we have one here from Cryptomaria. Says, excellent show. Thank you for being real. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. You're very kind. And we have one over here from Matt Bell. Says, Richard, long time, hope you're well. We still need to link up to talk police, military, law, and more. Do you think American politics will ever become normal and beneficial to workers, or will the government stay the course? It's absurd the celebrity status politicians get, yet make no effort to hide their actual ideology and have people refuse to see it and blindly defend them. So, I don't know, man. I don't know. The last time, and I could be mistaken, but the last time that I consider that the government did anything for American citizens is when the socialists, do you remember the New Deal coalition in the 1930s? So they were able to successfully lobby and pressure the government into doing something. right? About the Great Depression, about the crisis. But the thing is, it wasn't enough. FDR, people think that he's, some kind of hero for the New Deal. Yes, but the New Deal was a compromise. It wasn't the full thing. As you can see, healthcare is missing from it. As you can see, ever since he died, they've been trying to dismantle it, So it was just the beginning, but it's never been built on. This is 100 years now, almost. 100 years. So, what is the lesson from that? The lesson from that is that there is a history in the United States of successful worker movements, of the citizenry getting what it needs. Not entirely, but still a beginning. It works. It's happened. And people need to emulate that, right? It's very important. Large Marge says, if only Congress had as much passion and support for the American people as they do Israel. Well, they don't. The thing is, they don't work for you, do they? They work for corporations. They work for multinationals. They work for Wall Street and Israel. It's not just Israel. It's a whole, it's a whole slew of interests, of various interests. And one of them is Israel. Of course, you must remember something else also. The thing is, why does the United States support Israel? Because Israel is a colonial creation by the British, yes? And they stuck this right in the middle of the Arab world. I mean, just look at any map. You can see, Morocco is here, and then Saudi Arabia is down here. Or if you want to go up north, you'll see Iraq. And so right smack in the middle, you have this tiny, they call it a country, and it's a settler or colonial project, which is wreaking havoc on all the Arab countries, right? That's why the United States supports it. That's why the West supports it, because it's divide and conquer. Do you understand? So, starting from the end of World War I, the end of World War II, they have to leave. Decolonization. It's not real decolonization. But one of the ways that they maintain control over the region is, just look at the map, how they drew the borders in the first place, right? You have countries with borders that are straight lines. The Arabs did not draw those borders. Africans did not draw those borders. Those are white people. Those are Europeans, Westerners who drew these borders for them, right? And so they divide people based on sectarian lines. They turn people against each other. They create long-lasting suffering, right? When were the British? When did they leave Palestine? 1947, right? We're in 2021. No peace since then. And before that, they were occupying it themselves. Also no peace. There's no peace under British occupation, British rule, French rule, And before that, in the Middle East, you had 400 years of Ottoman colonization, of Ottoman imperialism. So, Arabs, for 500 years now, almost 500 years, in the Levant especially, they haven't known any real peace, So... Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but it's not really a tangent. It's quite important to understand. And of course, Sykes-Picot, which we've talked about before, it's various reasons. I know people, they think that, you have people who think that the only reason the United States supports Israel is because of some evangelical nonsense. Yeah, okay, you could say that that's one thing. But as I said, I think one of the main reasons is because Israel was put right in the middle of the Arab world to sow chaos, right? As I said, the British, they leave the mandate in Palestine in 1947. And then we're in 2021. There's been no peace, since then. Where's the Palestinian state? There's nothing. So go look at the map as well in Africa. Go look at the map in the Middle East. You have all these countries with borders that look extremely weird. You have straight lines, like someone drew it with a bloody ruler. That's what happened, right? Again, Africans did not draw their own borders. Arabs did not draw their own borders. Europeans, Westerners drew these borders for them. And they did it specifically in a way that, they divided countries based up on sectarianism. They want to divide and conquer, right? To pit brother against brother. So they start creating these issues which were not that apparent before. Not non-existent, but not as apparent. There's a difference. You understand? The same thing in Iraq, for example. You go and look at Iraq in 2003 after the invasion, right? It takes a year or two, but then all of a sudden, even this sectarian violence exploding. Yeah, but it wasn't this bad before. It didn't exist at this degree before. No one can reasonably argue this, And so this is what Western intervention, Western imperialism does. Intervention is such a way to whitewash it, It's imperialism, right? So they come in and they encourage and they create more sectarian issues than there were before. And this is how they maintain chaos in the region they divide and conquer. And so going back to Israel is right smack in the middle of the Arab world between Morocco and Iraq, or if you want Morocco and Saudi Arabia, Look how it's created chaos for Lebanon, for Egypt, for Jordan, for Syria, right? For Lebanon, for Palestinians. I mean, it goes without saying for Palestinians. Number one for Palestinians. Until today, you still have the Syrian Golan Heights illegally occupied. You still have Palestine under illegal occupation. This is one of the reasons why the West supports Israel, because they want to maintain a base there. They want to maintain a construct that makes sure Arabs cannot develop, deeper relations with each other, that they cannot have long-lasting peace. And as I said, this goes back many decades now, many centuries. You had British and French rule after the Sykes-Picot when they divided up the Middle East. They stayed there for 20 years. And then they before leaving, they just put Israel and then leave. And, just look at what's happened since. And before that, you had 400 years of the Ottomans. So, there's a long history, unfortunately. And, Arabs just want some peace and stability. Palestinians want dignity. They want their own country, This idea that other people on the other other side of the planet should decide whether they can have a country is fucking ridiculous, I don't accept this. I reject this completely. This idea that Tony Blinken goes on CNN and he's dictating whether Syria can have its Golan Heights back. Fuck you. We've had enough of this colonial bullshit. So, thank you, BS, for your tip. Says, I live in the U.S. and there are homeless military veterans. They actually don't even have what you would consider basic healthcare. So, I've heard many stories about the VA. I'm not too well versed on the current status of the VA, but if you look after Vietnam, I don't need to tell you how veterans were treated after Vietnam. That's not to say that the Vietnamese are not the primary victims. They are. Always. The country that is invaded, that is bombed, is always the primary victim. But it's a testament to how the government treats its own citizens like cannon fodder. They send them to get their legs blown off in the jungle, and then they come back with have all sorts of trauma, physical and psychological, and they just treat them like shit, right? So we've looked at this before. It's extraordinary. And this continues in many aspects, right? The poor draft, also the reason that they had to abolish the draft after Vietnam, they've kept the draft in another way. So they make sure that you can recruit people to the army. You can still send them off in exchange for healthcare, in exchange for university, which is usually basic. You don't have to trade a limb, literally, give an arm and a leg to get that in other developed countries or so-called developed countries. Why is it that the U.S. has the system? It's on purpose. It's to maintain recruitment levels. And it's actually much more sinister than that. You can go and look at documents about the Vietnam War, and they were even, when they wanted to balance the ratio because there were too many African Americans, right? So you have 13% of the population in the U.S. is African American, but 30% of the troops in Vietnam were African American. Like, why are there so many African Americans being sent to die in Vietnam? And the way that they fixed this, quote unquote, they just started sending white people, poor white people. So you can really see like how much fucking contempt and disdain they have for really everyone, But it's racial, it's a class warfare. It's really disgusting. And this continues. This is, Vietnam is not that long ago anyway, but it still continues in many ways. And so they exploit people. They prey on their poverty. They prey on their ills to, send them off as cannon fodder. And it's really messed up, honestly. And that's just one aspect of it. Matt Bell says the West has a long history of imperialism, destroying nations, imposing their legal systems, not even bothering to consider or care about the consequences. UN Human Rights Council is meeting. Think they'll mention U.S. crimes? No, they won't. Actually, the UN Human Rights Council, didn't they have Saudi Arabia chairing it, I think, a few years ago, which was, I mean, way to make a mockery out of the whole thing, right? Just put Saudi Arabia in charge. Of course they won't. Of course they won't. Unfortunately, the UN is controlled by a handful of countries, and it's been set up in a way that makes sure that everything will be undermined, any sort of progress, because the US, Russia, China, UK, France, they were given veto power. They're the P5, right? So they're permanent seats on the UN Security Council. I mean, look what that produces. Look what that produces, right? One of the reasons, again, that Israel wants an ally in the United States and the UK is also to have this perk of a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. And if you count France, which is, most of the time, they have 3. So, as I said, Israel is the only country in the UN or member of the UN which has 3 permanent seats on the UN Security Council, right? So that's another reason. And unfortunately, just going back to the way they set it up, it's really it really undermines everything when you have a handful of countries running the whole thing. Not to mention IMF, World Bank, which are their own kind of scandals. Yeah. And as you mentioned, they won't bring up any of the war crimes. No, I'm pretty sure they won't. By the way, I know this is kind of going off on a tangent now, but did you guys see the UN General Assembly with Boris Johnson speaking there? I mean, just really cringy, really cringy. I'll show it to you in a second. But it's just really abominable. So thank you to all of you for your donations. If you don't mind, I just need to have a sip before we continue because my throat is really dry. And thank you for all your kind donations and comments. If you have any questions, you can... Hold on, I'm pulling up the screen. There you go. If you have any questions, just shoot. You can also donate with the QR codes that are here. Just give me a second. And we're going to continue. Okay. Righto. Jolly good show. Jolly good show. Okay. Let's move on to the next topic. And this is more of an observation than anything else, I'm just getting the segment ready, if you'll allow me. If you'll permit. Okay. So let's dive right into this. So, as you may recall, the other day, AUKUS was announced, right? This new military partnership between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. And one of the main pillars of this partnership is Australia will receive 12 nuclear submarines. Okay, they will be built in Adelaide by the US and the UK. Okay? And I want to point out something about this, which I don't think anyone has mentioned much. Do you know how everyone has been screaming about Iran enriching uranium to 60%, right? They've been saying, oh my God, they're going to build a nuclear bomb. And this is so dangerous, even though Iran does not have a nuclear weapons program. So that's 60% for civilian use. Australia is going to receive nuclear submarines. Nuclear submarines are not diesel powered, as the name suggests. They're nuclear powered, right? They run on high enriched uranium. So the uranium needed to power them is 90%. 90%, which is weapons grade effectively, right? It's very close to weapons grade. And no one seems to care, right? And Iran and Australia are both signatories of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, okay? And no one seems to care. Very weird. Both of these things, actually, are permitted under the NPT. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you are a signatory of the NPT, you are allowed to have a civilian nuclear program. You are also allowed to use nuclear energy. Let me read this to you over here. This is from APLN, but they're citing the NPT. They say the NPT does not prohibit non-nuclear weapon states from non-explosive military uses of nuclear material, the principal example being the operation of naval propulsion reactors. Okay? So that's a nuclear submarine. Sorry, I switched to the wrong screen. I just realized. Okay, hold on. I'm going to switch it back. Excuse me. I'm going to read it to you again. Here we go. So the NPT does not prohibit non-nuclear weapon states from non-explosive military uses of nuclear material, the principal example being the operation of naval propulsion reactors. So that's another way of saying a nuclear submarine. So technically speaking, Iran has the right to a nuclear civilian program under the NPT, and Australia also has the right to use nuclear submarines under the NPT. But for some reason, people are only making a fuss about Iran. And the thing that is so crazy is that under the JCPOA, so under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and also the additional protocol, Iran had to limit its uranium enrichment to 3.67% over 15 years. And they did this. This is verified by the IAEA inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna. Under the additional protocol, they could go anywhere they like. They can do surprise inspections in any facility, right? I think of that. Does the United States allow anyone to do that in their country? Can inspectors just come and randomly check a nuclear facility? Does Israel allow that? So that's crazy, right? And they also have cameras running 24/7. And even now, while the talks are on hold to get the United States back in the JCPOA, Iran is still recording everything, but they're keeping it in a black box. So the idea behind that is that it's leverage, right? It's diplomatic pressure. It's like, listen, you lift the sanctions, you get the United States back into the JCPOA, you return to what we agreed on in 2015, or we delete everything on the memory cards. So you can't watch it, but if you lift sanctions, we'll give you the memory cards and you can verify everything. And the IAEA Director General himself is the one swapping the cards. He just went to Tehran a few days ago and swapped them out. And they've been doing this since February, okay? Because in December 2020, the Iranian parliament, the Mejlis, voted to get rid of the additional protocol. Not completely, but just in part. And why did they do this? Because Israel assassinated one of their nuclear scientists. And on top of that, they did it in a 3-month time window. So the idea was that, okay, well, in 3 months, the elections in the United States will be over. Whoever wins will have time to re-enter the nuclear deal, especially if it's Biden, because he says he's going to enter the nuclear deal again, right? He said that. So the idea was that, well, from December, if we wait 3 months, that gives Biden time to get inaugurated, right? Because he had already won at this point. Remember, the assassination is November 27, excuse me. So we already knew it's Biden. And he'll be inaugurated, and then he can go back into the JCPOA. So you can see every step of the way, Iran is being extremely patient. I mean, I'm not even sure how they do it, honestly, because I think many would have lost patience already. But the idea was like, let's wait. And they didn't do it, right? So February came and the United States was still not back in the JCPOA. So then they decided to have this 1-month agreement, which they've been extending every month since with the IAEA, which is that, look, we're not letting you have a live stream anymore of the footage, but we'll keep recording it and you can have it if you lift the sanctions and the JCPOA is resurrected. So the whole time Iran has been abiding by the JCPOA. There's so many articles, there's so many announcements and bulletins by the IAEA saying this, that Iran has been keeping to 3.67%. The only reason they got up to 60% is because of Trump, right? And even a year, for 1 year, from May 2018 to May 2019, after Trump left the JCPOA, Iran stuck to the original protocols. It didn't change anything. It stayed at 3.67%, the same number of centrifuges, nothing changed. After a year, they were like, okay, you're still not back in the JCPOA, so now we are going to increase the number of centrifuges, and we will also enrich uranium to 20%, right? And then when Trump when he murdered General Soleimani, and then when Dr. Mohsen Fakhrizadeh was killed by the Mossad and the Americans in November, every step of the way, Iran has been responding tit for tat. You do this, we're going to increase centrifuges. You do this, we're going to enrich uranium to 60%. So forth. So the only reason Iran is at 60% is because of the United States. Otherwise, they were following the protocols. This is an undisputable fact. And yet no one seems to mention this, because the way to cover the nuclear talks and the Iran nuclear deal in the mainstream media is to say that Iran is building a bomb, even though there's absolutely no proof for this. It's to say that Iran refuses to continue the talks. Like, always portray Iran as the party that is unwilling to cooperate, even though the United States left the deal. The United States never implemented the deal in full, even under Obama, when he crafted it. The United States made sure that Iran would respond by limiting cooperation under the additional protocol, that they would increase enrichment of uranium, the number of centrifuges. They made sure of this. But apparently, Iran is not cooperating, even though the United States still hasn't re-entered the JCPOA. It's incredible, right? How they twist, they just turn the whole world upside down. They give you an entirely fucking different version of events. It's really, really incredible. So, just going back to AUKUS, I don't see anyone whining about Australia receiving such nuclear technology. And you could have people who argue, well, Australia is not the one who's going to build them. The Americans and the British are going to come and build them for them. Look, man, there's no way on earth Australia or any country can maintain a fleet of nuclear submarines without a transfer of technology. Some transfer of technology is occurring here, whether you like it or not. Otherwise, how could they maintain the submarines? It's impossible, right? These things, I mean, any nuclear material, this is something that you will handle for decades. So some transfer of technology was taking place here, okay? And I put it to you in another way. Imagine if China, for example, or Russia wanted to give Iran nuclear submarines. You think they would shut up? Just apply the same logic. Imagine Russia says they're going to go to Tehran, they're going to go to Iran and build the submarines for Iran. Iran will not, they will not receive any of the technology, but they will have the submarines. You think they would shut up about that? You know goddamn well they would raise hell. Iran doesn't even have a nuclear weapons program, and they accuse it of building a nuclear bomb. So what would they do in that case? So there's a clear double standard here. This is undeniable. There is a clear fucking double standard, right? It's okay for, Western countries to transfer nuclear technology for military application. Nuclear submarines do not shoot nuclear missiles or ICBMs, nuclear-powered submarines, right, in this case. But nonetheless, they are, they're for military use. Their application is strictly military. They're not, Australia is not receiving 12 nuclear submarines to go hand out candy. It's to intimidate China. It's a military application. Okay? Iran has no military application with the uranium or with the nuclear program that it has. It just doesn't have one. We would know by now because the IAEA can go anywhere they like. We would know. There's no way Iran could build a nuclear weapon without the whole world knowing about this. So there is an unbelievable double standard here in the coverage about the Iran nuclear deal, in the coverage about Iran's nuclear program, in the coverage about AUKUS. Everyone seems fine with it, right? And even the people who are criticizing it, they're correctly criticizing it because it's antagonizing China. It's creating more risk in the Indo-Pacific, not less, like they claim. This is not peace and stability. What are you doing there in the first place? What is the UK doing there? They're antagonizing China. So that is a risk in of itself. But on top of it, you can see the clear double standard. This transfer of nuclear technology for military application, they would raise hell if it was happening with Iran. But with Australia, who cares? Whatever, Unbelievable, honestly. It's really unbelievable. So I just wanted to point this out because, it's very, very important to point it out. And once again, you see the double standard with the coverage and the logic also that they apply. It's not just about media coverage; it's also the governments. I mean, I haven't heard a single Israeli official complaining that Australia is receiving nuclear submarines. I haven't heard Netanyahu or Bennett open their mouths about that. Maybe they did. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't heard anyone open their mouths about it. The only people complaining are the French. Not because they don't want to antagonize China or because they're against Australia receiving nuclear technology for military use. They just wanted to make the money off of this endeavor. That's all. Oh man, the hypocrisy is unbelievable. So I'm just scrolling down over here. We have a comment over here from Marsh Flower. It says, right-wing linguistic eugenics use terms as individual to refer specific persons. Take a shot of H2O every time you hear it. You'll stay hydrated. I need a moment to understand in what reference this is, but maybe it'll come to me in a minute. You mean a shot of water, right? Okay, well, no, I'm still not getting it. I need a moment to digest it. But thank you for supporting the show, nonetheless. And give me a moment over here. So we've had a generous donation on PayPal. Thank you very much. This is from 1 second. When it'll tell me when it loads finally. This is from Karen. Thank you very much. I don't see a note, but I'm very grateful nonetheless. Thank you, Karen, for supporting the show. And I'm just checking if anyone else sent anything or has any questions so I don't miss them. I don't want to leave anyone out. So you guys are very generous. You're very kind. Thank you. Also, I've got something that I want to tell you about over here. Give me a second because I'll pull up the tab and show you. This is something that happened to me yesterday. Really incredible, huh? Okay. So, just again, 1 second. I need a sip of water, and I'll put up the donation screen for a second before we start the next segment. Okay, so I was just reading an update from this story that I want to tell you about. So let's begin, shall we? So I was covering. Hold on. I think you can hear me now. Yep. I was covering the 6 Palestinian men who escaped from Gilboa, from this Israeli maximum security prison, and they were recaptured. And there was a statement issued by Hamas saying that there will be no more prisoner exchanges with the Israelis unless those 6 men who escaped are included. So essentially what they're saying is that one way or another, either by escaping or through a prisoner exchange, those 6 men will be free. This is the logic behind it. Now, Instagram decided to remove my post that said what I just told you. Look, take a look. Again, wrong screen. So this is what they said. They say your post goes against our community guidelines. They say we removed your post for violence or dangerous organizations. This is the post. It's a tweet. Again, a quote, I'm going to read it to you. Quote, Hamas have declared no prisoner exchange with Israel is to take place without the 6 men from Gilboa. One way or another, they will be free. And the reasoning is we remove photos or videos of extreme graphic violence, photos or videos that encourage violence or attacks on anyone based on their religious, ethnic, or sexual background, specific threats of physical harm, theft, vandalism, or financial harm. What does any of that have to do with my post? What does any of that have to do with my post? I'm literally just reporting the news. So obviously, they're butthurt because I just said the name Hamas. How am I supposed to report on Hamas if I can't say their name? Can you believe this? And I just got a notification that they reviewed my request for them to appeal this, and they confirmed. I'll read it to you right now. They say, we've reviewed your photo. Thanks for your feedback, and we've removed it for violating our community guidelines. We reviewed your photo again and confirmed that it goes against. I don't understand this. I really don't. This is outrageous. You know, we were talking about this the other day. How Facebook, which owns Instagram, was purposely taking down pro-Palestinian posts or posts that were critical of Israel during the May onslaught when Israel attacked Gaza for 11 days in May 2021, so a few months ago. And we have internal documents proving this, right? And I told you, because I wanted to be balanced and I wanted to be fair and honest in the coverage, that I did not experience any censorship, right? I talked freely about what Israel was doing. I even had a video that went viral, 2 million views almost, where I was talking about it, and I had no problems. But now, this is the first time I've had a problem like this on Instagram. And I did literally nothing except report on what Hamas said. What the fuck? It's completely objective. What I've said here is completely objective. It's not even, in support of it or against it. I'm just reporting what they said. This is what they declared. I mean, this is really Orwellian in some way. What does this accomplish? Who the hell reviewed this and said that this is promoting violence or something, or whatever they say here? There's no extreme graphic violence. No one is encouraging violence. It's unbelievable, honestly, unbelievable. Also, if you know nothing about the story, so about the 6 men who escaped, about this prison break, the post wouldn't even make any sense to you. I gather most people don't even know what Gilboa is. I certainly hadn't heard of it. I knew the complex that they built it in, but most people don't even know what Gilboa is, right? Unbelievable, really unbelievable. And we all know the reason for this. It's because they don't want anyone criticizing Israel. I mean, what makes this one funny, though, is because this one wasn't even taking a side or nothing. It's literally just reporting. And I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say, man. It's really self-explanatory. It really is. As Michael says, the Ministry of Truth has spoken. Yeah, I guess so. I saw some of the comments underneath the photo, and one of them said, "How are you?" It was along the lines of, "How are the Israelis going to blame Hamas for everything if they can't say their name?" Oh man, no, this is really stupid. Honestly, this is childish. This is childish. Can't even report the news now, really. You all know that mainstream media would never experience this kind of censorship, right? Never. They can talk about the exact same issue in the exact same way, and it won't happen to them. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Ford Fisher, who is I don't know, he makes videos. He's a reporter. He makes videos, and his videos were licensed to some mainstream news outlet. I don't know if it was CNN or something, but something big like that. And they took down his video, which he filmed and licensed, to other news outlets, but left the videos of the news outlets up. I mean, that says everything you need to know about how messed up their algorithms are, how ludicrous this kind of blanket censorship is. It's really just unbelievable. Really. This is minor, what has just happened here. This is minor compared to what other people have experienced. But it says a lot, and I just wanted to share it with you. So there you go. So we have a super chat over here from Ander. Says, thanks, Richard. I appreciate the program tons. Thank you. I appreciate you. And thank you for supporting the program. We have another super chat over here from Deha. Okay, I'm glad. I love it when people spell out their names phonetically so I can get it right. Thank you. Deha says, I'm on the organizing committee for New York City DSA anti-war working group. You are always a great source on foreign policy. Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. And I try to. I mean, I try to talk as much as possible about both. I mean, U.S. politics, of course, is world politics because it's an empire. I said once something along the lines of, the decisions, the actions by U.S. politicians affect non-Americans more than Americans. That is true to a certain degree. But I'm glad that you said that, and I appreciate it very much because, of course, there's a lot of things that don't go reported on and that go unreported. So I want to shine a light on them. So thank you for that. That's very kind of you. I'm just double checking here, make sure I didn't miss anyone. You guys are very kind, very generous. I've got another notification from Instagram for some reason, just again now about the same thing. I don't know what their issue is, but okay. I rarely plug my social media, by the way, so I'll just tell you, if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's at Richard T. Medhurst. Not Richard Medhurst, Richard T. Medhurst. That's where you'll find me. Just type Richard Medhurst in the search, you'll come across my account. And Instagram Live is actually something I haven't dabbled in too much. Maybe I should try that a bit more. I don't know if there's a way we can kind of route this stream to there at the same time. That'll be pretty good, right? Then we get hit multiple birds with one stone. Also, I see we have in the chat someone called Webcams, Hot Girls and Boys Video. You've made it when you have bots in the chat spamming the live stream. That's a clear sign of success. Oh man, that's hilarious. Thank you to Claudia for muting them. That's appreciated because I mean, it's a bot. It's a spam bot. We also have 22 people watching on Rockfin, which is good. How many people are we on there already? I'm trying to keep up with the number of followers we have. If you'll just allow me a second. So I'm looking over here. There's tons of people that you guys already know from YouTube who are on here. We are now at 14,597. Very good. Very good. So I encourage you guys to go make an account on Rockfin for free. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just a backup plan because, I just showed you what they're doing with the censorship. It's not confined to just Instagram. You remember what happened with my YouTube? So yeah, it's good to have a contingency plan and yeah. One more thing I just wanted to look at with you guys were some memes. Because I don't know if you can, hold on, I'll just bring them up for you. Give me a second. There we go. So just one thing that I want to show you very quickly. People have started, being very creative with this issue about AOC and the present vote on Israel. So I've started seeing a bunch of memes. For example, fund the dome on her dress. So that's pretty good. And Claudia mashed it up, did a mashup with another meme, and we've had a nice reproduction here for a nice thumbnail, right? So I think they're funny, and I think more will pop up as we continue, But it is quite funny that she does a Medicare for all mask, she does a tax the rich dress, and let's be very clear, because maybe some people take offense to this. Oh, I don't see why they would, but I don't have a problem with that if she was actually following through with the votes. Do you understand? Because it's one thing, I don't give a shit. Like, it's a nice mask, it's a nice dress, but are you actually doing those things? Not really. That's. Do you understand the problem here? And so it's kind of the same thing now with the $15 minimum wage. Of course, they flaked on that, and today with Israel, they say that they support Palestine. So why are they giving money to Israel? I don't know. This is not today. This is in July already, of course. Today was just a posturing vote. But even AOC couldn't do that. When is she going to come out with, a tank that says Free Palestine, or a kufia that says, Shalom, welcome to Israel? Or I don't know. Like, it's so performative. It's so ridiculous. It's really borderline comical. Although if it weren't so, and it would be comical if it weren't so tragic. But it's very important to highlight this, not because this is something confined to AOC. I mean, this is really like basic U.S. politics. You capitulate to corporate interests. You send money to Israel, and that's how it is. It doesn't matter if you're from Alaska or you're from Queens. You are a U.S. politician. That's how it works. And anything else is just for show, which has always been that case. Really, I think people they wrongly they misunderstand what we're saying and think that this is like focusing on some group. No. The whole system has always been like this. Do you understand? And so it's because of that we can look at what's happening with the squad or these so-called progressives, and we know that it's performative from the get-go. And now even more so when you look at the last couple of months, what has happened, I'm not going to go through all the issues again. We just did that, but you get it. Marshflower says, what do we do in the presence of an economic construct that's designed to kill all life? Hashtag creeping... Hold on, it's a long hashtag. Hashtag creeping, flat, predatory, jackass, militant, vulture capitalism. Well, I don't know, but, not doing anything is definitely not what we're going to do. That sounds like some a Churchill-esque quote. But no, seriously, like, I will say one thing, which I heard today from, I think it was Gaddafi's old spokesperson, and he said that, he didn't just give the same old critique about capitalism. He really laid it out as theft of resources from other countries, right? And so war is a sign of success for them. I know this is rudimentary. We know this already, but it's just the way that he said it was quite good. And you talk about capitalism and a system that's designed to kill. That's what it is. When we talk about imperialism, it's really the cruelest manifestation of it. The most racist manifestation of it, truly, because I don't think you could carry out these things without an element of racism in there. And it's not only that, but it's certainly one part of it. And, this idea of going to war as a sign of success, it's really what it is. That's really what it is. So... All right, guys, so that's it from me. Before I go, I just want to thank you very much for supporting the program. If you would like to donate, there is a QR code for Venmo, CashApp, and PayPal. You can scan it with your camera app. And we are also, this is really great, we are halfway to our goal on Patreon. Look at that, 425. If someone joins quickly, I will gladly oblige them with a crab dance, which is our tradition here. We play a lovely crab dance. And it's our tradition. So you can support the show for $2 a month, $5, anything you like. It's up to you. You can put in a custom figure, and the link is patreon.com/RichardMedhurst. And I'm very grateful for those who support the channel anyway. Commenting, liking, sharing, this all contributes and helps us with the algorithm. And of course, make an account on Rockfin. It's free. Sign up on Telegram for free. It doesn't cost you anything. The only goal of those things is to have a contingency plan and to give you notifications, right? I want to make sure that you get a notification when we go live. So we have a thing on Telegram for that. The link is in the chat. It's in the description. It doesn't cost you anything if you already have the app. And if not, you can also sign up by email. You'll get an email when we go live. So, I'm just trying to make it as accessible as possible. I've talked before about maybe doing like paywalls and stuff. I don't believe in this stuff. I think it should be accessible to everyone, and that's how it should be. Furrow, thank you for the tip on Rockfin. Says, can the Arab world kick these Western colonial people out at this point? We're trying, but I don't know, because when we talk about the Arab world, it's a handful of countries at this point. When I say that, I mean government-wise. If you go, for example, to, Saudi Arabia, most of the people there obviously don't like that their government has dealings with the United States or Israel. If you go and look at Bahrain, like all these countries that have, even Morocco, that have established some ties in one form or another with Israel, they don't like this. This is just a very few people at the top, right? So let's be very clear on that. And so when we look at the upper echelon, we look at the governments in the Arab world, there's just a few who are actually still combating imperialism, combating Zionism. What is it? Syria, some parts of Lebanon, although I would just say Lebanon purely, Iraq, Palestine, of course, and, Algeria actually has always been a very strong support of the Palestinians. You know that? They don't get enough credit. They should. And of course, when we look at the monarchs, the monarchies in the Persian Gulf, the Arab monarchies, unfortunately, most of them, well, the story, they're client states of the U.S. Look what they've done to Yemen. Look how they normalized ties with Israel. It's a shame. And same thing in Jordan and Egypt. I mean, Jordan and Egypt, they established ties with Israel a while ago, but the people there do not want that at all. This is against their will. And I think it's very important to say that. Just as, when we talk about, for example, in the United States, the U.S. bombing another country, that doesn't mean that everyone in the U.S. wants to bomb this country. Some people have been, brainwashed to want that. But even then, the majority of people are not in favor of this. It's always a few people at the top. It's corporations, the politicians that they've bought, and so forth. It's a very tiny percentage, and that's what we mean. And so when the Arab world will kick out the colonizers, I don't know. They say decolonization started in 1945, but we've yet to see any of it. Syria has Israel occupying the south in the Golan Heights, Turkey occupying the north in Idlib, the Americans occupying the northeast and the east in Hasaka and Deir ez-Zor. And Palestine is under occupation since longer than that. Iraq is under occupation. It's a very sad sight. But I think we're transitioning to a multipolar world. We'll see. When Lebanon, for example, they've imported this fuel the other day, this is such a win. Like, people don't understand what a huge shift in geopolitics this is. It's unreal, It's unreal that they were able to do this. They got, seriously, let me lay this out again for you. What happened in Lebanon the other day with Hezbollah bringing in fuel is really a historic moment. What they were able to achieve here, they brought fuel from Iran, which is a sanctioned country, to Syria, which is another country sanctioned by the US, and then through to Lebanon, organized by Hezbollah, which itself is sanctioned by the United States, and Lebanon itself, which is de facto under a US blockade, So, this is an incredible feat. And the way that they played this, like chess, it's quite remarkable, because they backed the United States into a corner where the best option the United States had in this situation was to work with Syria a country that it is at war with and sanctioning to allow Egyptian gas to go to Jordan and then through Syria to Lebanon, all for the sake of undermining Iran and by extension also undermining Hezbollah. So either way, and both of them worked out. So the fuel came in anyway from Iran, and now Syria has agreed to let the pipeline, the Arab pipeline, bring in this gas and energy to Lebanon. It's quite masterful, tactically speaking, whether you agree with it or not. It's quite an important feat geopolitically. So, of course, they're not talking about that in the or portraying it as it is portrayed in the in English-speaking media. Instead, it's the same headlines. We looked at them, right? Oh, they brought these in, defying U.S. sanctions. Yes, they are defying U.S. sanctions, but you need to explain how they did it and why, and not just that it's happening. And they frame it in a way that how dare they defy U.S. sanctions, which is a different way to look at it, which is the arrogant colonial viewpoint. Like we decide the rules. U.S. law is universal law, and anyone who defies it is etc. etc. No, that's yes, they defied U.S. sanctions, but not because U.S. sanctions are universal law and should never be defied. It's because they're unilateral, they are illegal, and they are akin to siege warfare, and they should be defied, right? They kill people. Why should people in Syria starve? Why should people in Cuba not be able to buy syringes? Why should people in Iran suffer because of after following, by the way, the JCPOA, which was the reason sanctions were lifted, and then unfairly, it's all cruel. It's all cruelty wherever these sanctions are applied. And remember, they are unilateral and they are illegal. And it's that's a recent win. If we're going to talk about wins in terms of anti-imperialism, yes, certainly. Of course, not everyone will see it that way, but it is a victory from one side, certainly. And I don't see why anyone could be against it. I mean, the fuel is going for free to orphanages, to hospitals, to the Lebanese Red Cross, to people with special needs. It's free fuel in a country that is in an economic crisis. Only the Western press could turn that into something negative. And not just them, of course. You have people who are opposed to either Iran or Hezbollah or Syria, who are also trying to portray it as something, cataclysmically evil. I mean, what was the alternative? Look at the alternative. Iran was not bringing fuel to Lebanon. Hezbollah was not bringing fuel. None of this was happening. How was the situation? Tell me. Was it good? It's terrible. And this doesn't solve it by any means, by any stretch, but it's a start. You understand? But yeah. So I hope that someone answers the question. It's one way. It's a beginning. Pookie says, don't forget Sudan, but unfortunately they just made a deal with Israel. Yes, of course. So, I this is very unfortunate. Last year, Sudan also made a deal, as you just said, with Israel, and they were forced into it. The way that they get these Arab countries to normalize ties with Israel, they do it by coercion. Do you know what Sudan got in exchange for playing nice with Israel? The United States removed them from the list of state sponsors of terrorism. So, I mean, this is incredible. Apparently, the only criteria for whether you are a terrorist country is whether you have relations with Israel or not, which, kind of says everything. And once again, if you go and you talk to anyone on the street in Sudan, or you go to anyone on the street in Bahrain, the people are not okay with this. It's their government. It's a few, a tiny amount of people who are doing this in their name. So, yeah. San Marchio, thank you very much for the sticker. I appreciate it very much. You're very kind. And you guys are the best, really. So I will see you guys soon. All the segments will be up. Thank you so much for tuning in and for supporting the show. Take care. Have a good day, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Ma salame. Bye-bye.